On the evening of May 16, 2006, a man named Rey Rivera was at home in Baltimore. The phone rang. He answered it. And then he ran out of the house so fast he left almost everything behind. His glasses, his normal routine, his life. He got into his car and drove off into the evening. He was never seen alive again. 8 days later, 3 of his co-workers were searching the area near where his car had been found abandoned. They climbed to the top of a parking garage next to a grand historic hotel, the Belvedere. They looked down at a lower rooftop, and they saw a hole punched clean through the metal roof of a closed, empty conference room. Inside that sealed room, on the floor beneath the hole, was the body of Rey Rivera. The official theory is that he fell, or jumped, from the roof of the 14-story hotel and crashed straight through the roof of the annex below. But here's the problem. His glasses were found on the roof, undamaged. His flip-flops were near the hole, and the injuries on his body did not match a fall. They matched something else. This is one of the strangest deaths in American history, and 20 years later, nobody can explain it. Rey Rivera was 32 years old, 6'5", a former water polo player, described by people who knew him as charismatic, warm, like an old-fashioned movie star. He had recently married the love of his life, Allison. They'd had their wedding in Puerto Rico just months earlier. He was happy. He was healthy. He had dreams. He wanted to be a screenwriter and filmmaker, and the couple were planning to move back to Los Angeles to chase that future. But there was one complication: his job. Rey had moved to Baltimore at the invitation of his oldest friend, a man named Porter Stansberry, who ran a financial publishing company. Rey wrote a financial newsletter for them, giving investment advice to subscribers. The problem was, Rey didn't really know finance, and when his advice cost people money, it weighed on him heavily. He started to suffer from insomnia, and in the days before he vanished, something changed. He became anxious, afraid. He didn't want to be alone. His home alarm went off twice in 1 week. One night at 1 a.m., when it triggered, Allison found Rey rushing out of a room, holding a baseball bat. Something had frightened him, something he wouldn't explain. 2 days before he disappeared, he left a voicemail for his friend Porter. The message said, he had figured it all out. Let's go back to that evening. May 16th. Allison was away on a business trip. A house guest, a friend of Allison's named Claudia, was at the home. According to her, around 6:30 in the evening, the phone rang. Rey answered it, and whatever was said on that call made him leave immediately, in such a hurry that he didn't explain where he was going. He just went. This was completely out of character. His own brother said, Rey was the kind of person who would tell you not only where he was going, but exactly how he planned to get there. He took his keys, his phone, $20 and a credit card. He left behind his toothbrush and his retainer. The small things you'd take if you plan to stay out overnight, which suggests he expected to come right back. The next day, Allison began to worry when his phone went straight to voicemail. She came home. She reported him missing. And here is one of the most haunting details of the entire case. Investigators later traced that final phone call, the one that made him run out the door. It came from the switchboard of his own company, Agora Publishing. But they could never determine who actually made the call. The number led back to a central switchboard used by dozens of people. Someone called Rey Rivera that evening. Someone made him run. And to this day, nobody knows who. For 8 days, Rey Rivera was missing. His family and friends searched everywhere. Then, on May 24th, 3 of his co-workers decided to check the Belvedere, the historic hotel right next to their office, where Rey's car had been found in a nearby lot. They climbed the parking garage. They looked over the edge at the hotel's lower rooftops, and they saw 2 things, a pair of flip-flops and a hole in the roof of the second-floor conference room. Police were called. A manager unlocked the conference room, which had been closed and empty, and inside, beneath the hole, they found Rey's body. Now, here's where it stops making sense. The official conclusion was that Rey went to the roof of the Belvedere, about 14 stories up, and went over the edge, falling nearly 200 feet and punching through the annex roof. But the physical evidence fights that theory at every turn. His glasses were found on the roof, intact, not broken. How does a man fall to his death, but his glasses survive, neatly placed? His autopsy showed broken shins, fractured ribs, punctured lungs. One forensic expert noted his injuries looked less like a fall, and more like being struck by a car. The hole in the roof was, some argued, too small and too clean for a body falling from that height. And no one in the entire hotel, guests, staff, anyone, reported hearing a sound. After Rey's body was found, Allison searched their home for anything that might explain what happened. Behind his computer, taped out of sight, she found a note. It was unlike anything they expected. The note was a strange, sprawling document. It referenced making people younger. It referenced brothers and sisters who had passed on. It mentioned several movies by name, and it contained references to the Freemasons, opening and closing with phrases connected to the Masonic order. On the same day Rey vanished, records showed he had contacted a local Masonic lodge, asking about membership. He had also been reading books about Freemasonry in the weeks before. The note was so bizarre that police sent it to the FBI for analysis, and the FBI came back with a clear conclusion. This was not a suicide note. It did not express any intention to die. Some believe the note suggests a man in psychological crisis. Others believe it was something else entirely, a document meant to make a healthy man look unstable after the fact. Because remember, his wife, his family, his friends, and even some of the detectives insisted Rey showed no signs of being suicidal. He was newly married. He had plans for the weekend. He had told his friend he'd figured it all out. Those are not the words of a man saying goodbye. So what happened to Rey Rivera? The first theory is the official one, that he died by suicide, jumping from the Belvedere in a moment of psychological crisis. But the physical evidence, the undamaged glasses, the FBI's rejection of the note, and the testimony of everyone who knew him all push against it. The second theory is murder. Rey worked for a financial company that had already been investigated for fraud, fined over $1 million by regulators. He had told his friend he'd figured it all out. He was frightened in his final days. Some believe he learned something he wasn't supposed to know, that the phone call that night was a lure, that his death was staged to look like a fall. The retired detective who first worked the case said the scene looked staged. He was reassigned just 3 weeks into his investigation. And then there's the silence. The company Rey worked for reportedly advised employees not to speak to the media. The owner declined to be interviewed. The parking garage next to the Belvedere apparently had surveillance cameras, but the footage question was never resolved. The rooftop camera on the hotel was disconnected that night. Every thread that could lead to an answer seems to end in a wall. Rey Rivera was a healthy, happily married man who ran out of his house one evening because of a phone call and ended up dead inside a sealed room, in a way that physics struggles to explain. The medical examiner refused to call it suicide. They refused to call it murder. They marked it with a single word: undetermined. And that is where it remains. This has been The Dark Stories. Sleep well.